Hello and welcome back to the Bicycle Association podcast, where we aim to share more of the work that we do in an easy to digest way. My name is Alex Seaman, I'm the host of the BA podcast, and I'd like you to think of this as BA Bite Size, where we help you cut through the noise and find out what is really important for your business and point you to where you can find out more information on our website. In this episode, we're going to share the second session from the BA Members Conference. Now, these sessions weren't created as podcasts, but we think that they're well worth sharing. So here it is, the local bicycle economy with our very own Simon and Kirsty Ratti.
You're listening to the BA podcast.
So I'm going to talk today about what we're calling the local bicycle economy. This is a really exciting thing that I think has been trailed in a few other sessions already this week, basically talking about how we can take the case for more cycling investment down to a local level. Let's start with what this is all about. So I think this session was teed up really nicely on Monday in our opening advocacy session by Chris Heaton-Harris, Philip and Steve. So I've just sort of got a few comments really that they made on Monday, which I thought would be useful for setting the scene. So the Minister, first of all, Chris Heaton-Harris, talked about there being £2 billion worth of investment over the life of this Parliament that had basically been identified and still ring-fenced and still available, that was available to invest in cycling and walking. And, you know, this is brilliant. This is basically the most money that cycling has ever had to invest. And, you know, we're very excited about the potential for this going forward. What he also said, though, was that there were three key ingredients in place. He talked about the leadership from the Prime Minister down in terms of wanting to grow cycling and to raise and have an ambition of getting 55% of journeys carried out by cycling in our towns and cities, up from 42% at the moment by 2030. He also talked about the fact that the funding is there, and you know it's really important that we spend it wisely. And he also talked about the funding being part of a long-term cycling investment strategy. So you know those three things in combination should give us confidence that there's a real opportunity to step change cycling participation levels across the UK. After the Minister, Philip then went on to talk about how the BA is planning to take that forward in terms of our advocacy position. He said it really stood out for me. You know, our role doesn't stop. You know, what's really important now for us to do is take the data, use facts and our evidence to support this initiative and to work locally to make sure that investment really does get unlocked at a local level. And Steve sort of carried on with that, talking about how, you know, we've got to convert this national funding into real investment on the ground. You know, local authorities need to be bold and ambitious. And, you know, what we want to do on behalf of the industry is make sure that they can hear our voice and that we're contributing to this conversation. And, you know, what we do know is that government listens to the voice of business. And, you know, we've got a real chance to work together to do this. So what is our local bicycle economy project? Well, very simply, it's a way for industry to work together to encourage that investment locally in cycling. And, you know, lots of people are doing this. There's plenty of campaign groups who are lobbying for higher levels of cycling locally. You know, what can we bring that's different to that debate? And I think really there are three things. First of all, we have our market data service. You know, we can now put an accurate value on what the industry is contributing locally in terms of the sales contribution, the number of bikes sold, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, that's something that nobody's ever been able to do before. The second thing that we can do is bring the industry into this debate in a joined up way so that we have a single voice. You know, loads of our members, loads of cycling businesses around the country are already involved with advocating for more cycling locally. You know, and we think there's a real opportunity here for strengthening numbers. And really, that's the third thing that we think as the BA we can do is we can coordinate that. And the local bicycle economy initiative is our vehicle to be able to do that. So how's it going to work? Well, step one really is to pick a region. And, we spent a lot of time earlier this year thinking about where should we start this project? And we've ended up with London. And why London? Well, there's a few different reasons, really. First of all, in spite of all of the work that's been done in London in terms of investment in cycling up until now, there's still a long way to go. And if you look at current levels of cycling in terms of mode share, if you look at the sort of infrastructure investment, there's still a lot to do. And we know that in London, if we can get the levels up in cycling to where we think they should be, that will make a big difference nationally as well. So, starting in London does make a lot of sense. But also the thing that helped us choose London was London Cycling Campaign. As you'll hear in a moment, we've got a really strong partner that we can work with to really make this come alive in London first. So once we pick the region, what do we do next? So the next thing is about gathering evidence. And this is about using facts and data to make our case. And at the heart of that is the Market Data Service. And in the Greater London area, we've got over 200 shops. We've been able to project that already in the London area, we've got 160 million pounds of turnover coming through all the retail businesses that sell in London. And a similar amount in terms of turnover from suppliers and manufacturing businesses. So, we've calculated that there's over £1 billion worth of economic value that's already being contributed into the London economy from the cycling industry, and somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 what we're calling green jobs. So evidence gathering is step two. Number three then is about finding somebody locally that we can work with who can help us bring this alive and make sure that we are talking to the right people when we are making the convincing argument about investing in that local area. And Ashok will talk shortly about how we're going to do that in London. And then steps 4 and 5 then really are all about, what do we do? So we'll make the argument with the right decision makers, with the stakeholders, and in London, that's both at a cross London level and it will also end up being at a borough level. And then finally, it's about adding value on the ground and working together to make the case and to support the delivery of that investment on the ground, and growing our cycling businesses, investing in our people, training and developing people, and just basically bringing the economic activity to bear that will result in those high levels of cycling. Anyway, so that's the theory. Let's bring it alive a little bit by talking about the reality of how we're going to do this in London. So, I'm delighted that Ashok could join us today and can talk to you about London Cycling Campaign. Perhaps you'd like to start off just talking to everybody who's on the call about who London Cycling Campaign are.
Sure, thanks very much, Simon. And it's a really big shame that we're not in the same room together, because it would be great to have a direct conversation with as many of you as possible. But I'm really delighted to be working with Simon, you guys, and everybody else in the Bicycle Association on this, I think, really, really exciting project. Right, the London Cycling Campaign. So we do what it says on the tin. We campaign for cycling provision in London. So our objective is to persuade London's decision makers, principally political decision makers, the mayor and the mayor's advisors, the mayor's team, the boroughs, to take the action that we think is necessary to make London's streets safe enough so that people of all ages and abilities can cycle for their everyday journeys without fear of their lives in doing so. We do this because we think the net result will be, of course, a city in which carbon emissions are lower, pollution is lower, congestion is lower, quality of life is higher, sheer happiness is greater. And those are our motivating, those are our drivers. And we've got 20,000 members and supporters, which we think makes us one of the biggest urban cycling campaigns in the world. And I think we've been, just to spend 1 minute on just blowing our own trumpet for a second, we think we've been really played a significant part in what's happened in London over the past decade. So back in 2012, we ran a campaign called Love London Go Dutch, which was supported by the Bicycle Association, which persuaded Boris Johnson to put aside his previous approach to cycling infrastructure in London, which was to slap down some blue paint and adopt the Dutch-style approach. And that led to the kind of cycling infrastructure that we've seen being developed and implemented in London over the last 8 or 9 years. And the Mini Hollands programme, named after that campaign, which was also initiated by Mayor Boris Johnson, a £100 million programme. And then we were able to persuade Sadiq Khan at the time of his election in 2016 to triple the amount of protected space for cycling in London, and also do things like initiate a direct vision lorry scheme to make lorries safer, because lorries are responsible for about half of the deaths that we see amongst cyclists in collisions every year. So, and that was also supported by the Bicycle Association. And recently, Boris, as you know, has announced, I think it was last year, the programme to roll out this sort of Dutch-style design standards for cycling infrastructure across the UK, with funding for 30 Mini Hollands, I believe it is, across the UK. So we've been quite successful and played a really important part in not just the agenda, developing the agenda and implementation on the ground of safe cycling infrastructure in London, but nationally as well, again, with support from the BA. So that's us. I should also say that as well as being a positive, constructive campaigners, we do work on the ground to directly help people cycle, such as the work that has been funded by Trek, where we're trying to improve the diversity of people who are cycling, working directly with community organisations on the ground, and our Cycle Buddy scheme, which pairs up experienced cyclists with those who are a bit more nervous, a bit less experienced, to do a program where they ride together on and make journeys together, which helps develop the confidence of the inexperienced rider. So that's us. And I guess you're going to ask me about the project in a second.
Yes, you could tell I was just itching to ask the next question.
Yeah, I was going on too long, sorry.
So we've spent the last month, haven't we, working together on our approach, and it'd be great if you could sort of talk everyone through, we sort of loosely labelled it our manifesto or our pitch. It'd be great if you could just sort of talk that through.
I will do. So here's the situation. In our big campaign right now, and it's been a big campaign for a year now in London, it's called Climate Safe Streets, where when we launched it, we set out a vision for how London could decarbonise our roads by 2030, in line with the demands of the climate emergency. And shortly after that, the mayor actually coincidentally announced that he set an objective for London as a whole to be net zero by 2030. Okay, that's very good. That would involve a very large uplift in cycling levels, because even with the most heroic and optimistic projections for electric vehicle penetration between now and 2030, we're still going to be left with a large mileage, possibly even the majority of miles being covered on London roads by internal combustion engine vehicles. And that, of course, means we won't hit our 2030 target. So there needs to be a big uplift in cycling for the mayor to achieve his goals, his climate change goals. The problem is the mayor's transport strategy does not deliver in its current form that level of uplift. Okay, hold on to that thought. Then Philip and I had a very enjoyable conversation over coffee one day when he told me about this fantastic project that you're doing to look at the economic value of cycling to the UK economy, and that you could use this incredible data set that you have to regionalize it and get down to a more granular level. And my eyes lit up. I said, can you do a forward cast on that? Could you work out what the level of cycling would need to be to help meet that 2030 roads decarbonisation target, and then assess the jobs and dividend uplift? And he said, of course. So this gets really exciting now, because, and this is the second important point, the mayor has also made a number of commitments about how London will exit from the economic damage that's been caused by COVID. It's called the Green New Deal, where the idea is that London's economy will be primed and moved in a direction that not only helps it recover from the pandemic, but also helps meet the environmental challenges that we face, principally climate change, and has set a target by 2030 of doubling the green sector in London and doubling the number of green jobs in London. Now, I've gone into lots of meetings. One of the things that I do is I was appointed by the mayor to be the chair of the London Sustainable Development Commission. So wearing both my London Cycling Campaign hat and the LSDC hat, I've gone into a lot of meetings where the mayor and his team have talked about green jobs, a green recovery, a Green New Deal, and also social equity. So who's getting these jobs? Where do they need to be targeted? And I've sat there and said, well, of course, cycling delivers on your carbon agenda, it delivers on your pollution agenda, delivers on your active travel agenda. And I've got hard numbers. We've got hard numbers. We've all got hard numbers and stats on that. But what we didn't have is the evidence to back up what I also said, which was there's an enormous number of jobs in cycling and you can grab that. That's a bonus. That comes for free just by delivering on your climate change goals, but we never had the numbers. So that was the second point. Third point is we now do have the numbers. So we have an absolutely fantastic opportunity to say to the mayor, to his team, to the boroughs, look, this is the decarbonisation trajectory you have set. There will have to be an uplift in cycling to achieve that. I know you think that's going to be difficult, and it will be. It's achievable, but it will be tricky. Guess what? On top of that, you get this fantastic jobs and economic dividends, 25,000 new jobs, green jobs, which can contribute to the mayor's green jobs target, and almost £5 billion per annum of economic value. That's £500 per person in London. And you can set that against the 25 or 30 pounds you're investing per head in cycling and see what a bonus this is. So that's the case. And I think that's a really exciting case. So we're going to be working together, of course, to try and make that case to London's decision makers.
Fabulous. Yeah, it sounds really compelling when you set it out like that. And so what's the next step with this now that we've sort of gathered our evidence? And I should say that we've worked with an independent consultancy, the Transport for Quality of Life, to bring together all the data sets. A lot of it was existing data that the likes of TfL and other well-established organisations have put together. Obviously, we've combined that with our own data, the market data service, to sort of create the total picture. So we think we've got a standalone piece of evidence that would stand up to any sort of scrutiny. But what we're going to do with this now?
So the first step, I think this is what we're calling phase one, isn't it, Simon, of the project, is just to get this information across the desks of the people in the GLA, not just the mayor himself, but the people who advise the mayor, because I just don't think they're aware of the economic value that cycling is already delivering to London's economy. And I don't think they're aware of and it's more than just sending out a press release. It's actually actively engaging with these people and explaining to them not just the hard numbers, because the hard numbers are really interesting and very compelling, 25,000 new jobs, £5 billion of economic value, but also make it real, make it human. Because remember, the mayor, the deputy mayors for environment, for transport, for communities and social justice, for planning, these are all people I've actually met recently and talked about the project, just warmed them up, and they're all just thinking, this is really interesting. What grabs them is not just the numbers, but the fact that this is real people in communities across the city, a lot of communities which are disadvantaged, a lot of demographics which are disadvantaged, this is the opportunity for businesses in high streets that are ailing because of the double whammy of the financial crisis a long time ago and now also COVID. And so the job now is not just to put the numbers on their desks, but to turn that into real stories, real life stories about businesses, about people getting apprenticeships, about new opportunities for skills and development and training. And the key thing here is careers. I talked to the deputy mayor for communities and social justice just before we went live with the number crunching, and she said, "Tell me about careers," because the people in the communities I work with, they want to know where their careers are. So it's that humanizing, socializing those numbers. That's our next stage.
It feels to me like there's some really exciting parts of this project which are starting to emerge as we get more into it. I'm sure that will continue to be the case. mean, we know across the industry that there's a real need for to develop a good skilled pipeline of people to come into the industry. If we've got a cycling economy in London, which is going to grow in the way that we think it needs to by 2030, then we've really got to do something about that. And I think that's potentially a great area the industry could get involved with, is thinking about how can we get together and support the development of that skilled pipeline of workers. Anyway, that's an aside. So we've talked about engaging with stakeholders at a pan-London level. Really, the debate's going to end up being at a borough level, though, isn't it? I mean, we've got 33 boroughs around London. One thing the Transport for Quality of Life report, I think, did really well was highlight the real spectrum of different levels of cycling and investment across those boroughs. How do you think this is going to play out at a borough level?
Well, this is something that I think we're going to have a great opportunity to address after the May elections, borough elections next year. I mean, I think everybody in this call appreciates that those elections themselves will be dominated by the usual things that matter at the local level, whether it's, local development or housing development or bin collection or whatever. But once we have our new leaders in place across the boroughs, they're going to be looking forward to the next 4 years and asking themselves, well, what's the trajectory for economic and social development in my borough? And they will be looking at that in the context, I would argue, of many things, of course, but I would argue in relation to climate change, and also in relation to the way in which we can move people around our city in an affordable way, bearing in mind the big financial squeeze that Transport for London and therefore everybody else is under in London, which means we can't be investing in lots more tube lines or lots more bus lines, although that needs to happen as easily as we might. Whereas an investment in cycling can deliver on a whole range of transport, social, environment, and quality of life objectives. So they will be thinking about how people move around their boroughs. They'll also be thinking about economic development of their boroughs. We can put those two issues together by talking to them about specific high streets, specific businesses, specific business opportunities. Here's one example. I came across some data. I haven't got access to the data directly yet, but I was told about this data that's being gathered by a body called London Councils, which brings all the councils together to collaborate on issues of joint interest. And they're looking at where jobs will be lost in London, which boroughs will lose jobs as a result of the transition to a net zero economy. So which fossil fuel intensive jobs are going to go? And of course, those are areas where new job creation will be necessary. So we'll be able to go, I hope, down to a fairly granular level in the boroughs and say, well, look, you've got all these mechanics, for example, in these local garages who are fixing up petrol and diesel cars now. Well, actually, in the future, those EVs, those electric vehicles, they're modular, they're simpler, they're back to base. There are going to be lots of people in arches, railway arches in London thinking, how do I use my skills? Yeah. And arches in your borough, you have an opportunity. It's called the just transition. Those who have a familiarity with the trade union term, but it's a more widely used term now. You have a question about just transition. Where are your workers going to get the jobs in the future? So there are all sorts of reasons why I think we can really plug into local debates at the borough level about transport, economics, jobs, skills.
And this is where I think it really comes alive, doesn't it, in terms of where the industry members, bike shops, brands, manufacturers, distributors can really get involved. I wonder whether now's a good time then to talk about some of these real life stories and how we're going to move it forward.
Well, that's a fantastic question, because you and I have discussed this many times. I think what we've got to do is move this question forward with the support and participation of some of the members of the BA. Why do I say that? So going back to my point about making real, humanizing the story, I do think we have to find real people with real businesses who have employed more workers, let's say. I mean, I remember during the height of the pandemic last year, we had photographs on our Twitter feed of long queues outside bike shops, of people waiting to get in. either to buy a bike or get their bike serviced. So we know that when the demand is there, the businesses are sometimes are struggling to fulfill it. So if we can take some businesses in London and say, look, this is what we did during the pandemic. This is how we could expand. We did expand. This is how much we could expand. These are the new workers we can take on board. This is the place we would do it, Peckham High Street, wherever. And that is where those 25,000 new jobs, or those £5 billion become real people, and hear their voices, hear the voices of the visitors, hear the voices of the apprentices, hear the voices of the counsellors, and then that case will really come alive, in my view. So the point here, Simon, is your members and ourselves. If we can find ways of working together, we can really tell this story in an incredibly compelling way.
Maybe Ashok, you can talk about how we're going to manage this project. Introduce Kirsty.
Sure. Well, I'm really delighted and thrilled that we've got somebody in Kirsty Ratti, who's going to be the project manager here, because it's quite a lot of work to be done. It's one thing to produce a piece of paper and some nice graphics and some nice images, which is, of course, what we're going to do, and then sell them in to decision makers. So we can do a selling in job, and we will do a selling in job. But even that needs organisation, so Kirsty will help with that. But going back to that point about humanising the story and working with people in the community and businesses in the community, there's a lot of coordination and a lot of insight and a lot of intelligence will be required to pull all that stuff together and create a narrative that nobody can resist. So fortunately, we've got somebody in the form, Kirsty, who can bring that intelligence and insight and creativity and drive. And I think, Kirsty, you've been around with us for about a month, maybe a bit more, and you've got a background in marketing and project management in the private sector. And so it's a real asset to us that we've got you on board and that you can keep us in order. And I think you've not worked in the cycling sector before, so you're gradually getting used to both the business side's idiosyncrasies and the even greater idiosyncrasies and quirks on the campaign side. But so far, I think you're enjoying it. Aren't you, Kirsty? Over to you.
Yes, hi everyone. Yes, I'm green. I am green in two modes today. So I'm green in terms of coming to this industry and supporting the green cause. So yes, I'm very excited to get involved at this stage. We're embarking on potentially a third wave in cycling, and it's just a great time to get on board. And also for the first stage of the project, I am London based, so that helps. I've got a look at this from a private cyclist angle as well. So I'm going to be talking to two businesses based in London, and I'm first going to introduce you to Nick Brown, who is the founder of HaveBike. HaveBike was conceived out of frustration in lead times in getting access to cycle servicing and repair. So exactly those long queues that you were talking about, Ashok. And HaveBike strive to improve the customer experience, not only through timely appointments, but also the convenience of collection and delivery throughout London. So we're not going to lose sight of the 25,000 new green jobs that Ashok has very passionately talked about. And I know that you have experienced significant growth in just the last 2 or 3 years of your business, which is already creating real and positive impact on existing numbers of green jobs. So could you share with our audience some of your experience around resourcing up for your existing business, where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for having me on. Great to hear about that. We're actually getting involved to get some of this government money so we can really do some things to improve the cycling infrastructure. Yeah, we saw in lockdown, those temporary cycle lanes were put in place and you just had so many more people using them. It was wonderful to see. And it wasn't just people dressed like me cycling into the office. It was families, first timers. It really was. And I don't want us to lose that that wonderful sort of uptake in cycling. Let's keep pushing those the benefits of cycling. Ashok talks about the joy of cycling. Absolutely love it. And as you say, when lockdown hit and all of a sudden everybody wanted their bicycle service, they were pulling them out of the sheds, we were inundated with calls. We've gone from a team of 9 to 43 members of staff. We've had to take on more vans. We've had to change our operation from a 5-day a week to a 7-day a week, to run from 8 in the morning till 6 at night rather than 9 to 5. And it's really been driven by that increased demand in the need for more bicycle mechanics and more bikes being serviced. We also invested heavily in our tech platforms to make it easier for people to book. So for us to enable us to manage the whole process of a bicycle being collected by our vans, to it being delivered to the workshop, to it being worked on, build, and then sent out again to the customer. So it has really been a pivotal moment with this boom in cycling that we want to see continue.
Let's go back to your skills conundrum, because I know we touched on this when I spoke to you before, and this is a really big problem across the board in terms of getting skills into the industry. So, and you have got some lovely innovative ideas of how to entice people. So let's talk about those.
Just from my background, I used to work in the city. I was a finance lawyer, and one of the great ways that you managed to get people to come and join your firm was offered them a golden hello. So why don't we do that? If we want good mechanics, let's offer people bonuses for joining us. Now, it's not all just about offering people cash. They want a good work environment. They want to work on, they want to work with their passion, what motivates them. Bike mechanics want to work on bikes. They love working on bikes. And what we saw in lockdown was a lot of the bike mechanics in the shops, they were spending all the time on the phones to customers, either taking bookings or updating customers on where the parts are, when's the bike going to be ready, and they weren't actually doing the job they want to do, which is fix bikes. So we've removed all those barriers to make sure our mechanics just work on bikes day in, day out. It's what they want to do. It's what their skill set is. And we've moved those other roles that I think a lot of shop mechanics will be working on. We've moved those to different members of staff, which means that we've then also taken on new members of staff in the team that aren't necessarily mechanics, that they've got other skill sets, be it customer experience, be it logistics managers, procurement managers. And it's really good that the mechanics they're doing what they want to do. And also, mechanics don't want to talk to customers. That's a different skill set. That's a customer service person. So we've really seen a lot of benefit of doing that.
So it brings us around to career progression. So you're getting these lovely, wonderful people into your organisation. You're giving them opportunities to create new skills, and definitely, you're retaining them because you're giving them the opportunity to do the job that they actually want to do. How do we get new people into this industry? Let's talk about career progression, and also underpinned by some educational support in the form of institutions.
Whilst we are recruiting bike mechanics, we do say to them, we don't expect you to be a bike mechanic with us in 5 years' time. We expect you to move up in the organisation to a different roles. We're already seeing that now, where some mechanics have moved into purchasing roles, others gone into managerial positions, others gone into customer service positions if they're the suitable people for that role. So it's great that they can see progress in the company, because I think a lot of the worry is you become a bike mechanic and then there's no further to go. We want to break down that barrier. There is lots of different places you can go, provided the company grows. The issue in the first place is finding bike mechanics, making sure there's enough trained ones and there are enough opportunities for them. It was really disappointing last year that whilst the government says it is supporting cycling, it announced a skills and lifetime education project where there were 400 free courses for various skilled trades that people who didn't have formal education could apply for. Not one of those courses was bike mechanics. Yet we know that there is a shortage of bike mechanics, and that will only increase as the take-up of cycling increases as well. So we would like to see more thought about bicycle mechanic training, what facilities there are around the country for bicycle mechanic training, probably be more formalised than what it is. Again, from my previous career, every year I had to do X number of hours CPD points to ensure I could carry on practicing as a lawyer. I'd like to see the same sort of standards applied in the bike industry, because again, it keeps the mechanic skill set up. It's something that the staff like to do, the continuous training. It's really good for them. It's also good for the customer to get the quality of service. And I just don't see that we're anywhere near there yet. We have a 2-week course called SciTech 2 for a qualified mechanic, but it takes more than just those 2 weeks to have a good, a well-experienced, good quality mechanic working on your bike. And for us, the nearest place course where we can send people for bike mechanic training is Aylesbury, which is not commutable by bicycle. So, well, it's not easily commutable by day from London. So it's really difficult for us to, if we were to take on, say, apprentices, how do we then send the apprentices for that training that they need to go for? Where can they stay? And you end up having to put them in a hotel. It becomes quite a costly thing for businesses. You know, we're all small businesses at the end of the day, predominantly in the bike industry. You know, we don't have massive training budgets. So it would be better as well a central London training location. There should be more support for us to take on the apprenticeship schemes. I really like the apprenticeship schemes. It was a good way to get the young people into the industry. We can train them up. For us, we can train them up in our way. But again, there's been limited support in the past for that.
I mean, it's really compelling arguments. I mean, the whole mode share growth is inevitably going to push the problem that we need to actually face up to getting better skilled into the industry. If we're looking forwards now, and I know that your business, you're anticipating yet more growth over the coming year, and you've got some really exciting plans, and you're anticipating even more recruitment, and actually really significant recruitment over the next 12 months. How are you going to tackle that problem? Because it's just more of the same, and this is coming way before we're going to get any real formal support.
Well, I mean, the sad thing is we will have to continue to put adverts out for mechanics that are currently mechanics elsewhere, and hope that we can tempt them over to us. But then someone else in the industry loses that valued members of staff. You know, let's not forget a lot of these small business in the bike industry, that could be the only mechanic in the bike shop that they've got, and they need that mechanic to be building bikes and servicing customers' bikes. So again, it just causes problems in the bike industry if we're taking staff just from our fellow peers in the bike industry. So where else can we look if we weren't doing that? Well, it has to be either finding a transferable skill set and training somebody up. So Ashok mentioned about all these car mechanics. That's definitely one opportunity for us, but you still need to be trained up. It's very different fixing Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 group set with compatibility issues compared to putting an exhaust on a car. So there is still experience and training needed. And as I say, we're just going to have to really look at how the existing providers can help us by way of apprenticeships. So we're just training up the youngsters, but we've not really had much success in the past in finding the recruits or keeping them and basically keeping them educated and engaged.
I think it really underpins the issues, and that there's a perception that it's not a valued area in which for young people to come into, and that focus really needs to be increased to be able to entice these youngsters into even engaging before they've even maybe found the love of cycling. So, which is where I think a lot of existing people in the industry are coming from. Thank you very much, Nick. That's really, really insightful. Thank you. I'm going to come on to my second guest now, Mark Murphey, better known as Murph. So Murph has a long career in the cycle industry, working for Sigma Sport, Specialized, and most recently moving to Fudge and Sons to further develop what is one of London's oldest bike retailers. Hello, Murph.
Hello, Kirsty. Thank you for inviting me to speak and contribute. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. We're going to look at the potential market growth as a byproduct of meeting London's net zero carbon targets. And Fudge is very much present on some of London's high streets. So wanted to ask you, you're already looking at change as a new employee in Fudge and Sons, but looking forward to the market growth, just, first impressions, how do you think Fudge and Sons might respond to the market growth potential?
Yeah, great question. I suppose if I go back slightly in time, the bicycle industry and people who work in it we're inherently cycling nerds. And we kind of got into the sport or into the industry because we did it for sport, recreation, for fitness. And one of the big changes over the last few years, and probably kick-started with the 2012 Olympics, is that understanding that cycling can be more than just a kind of high performance pastime. And only now is the cycling industry sort of beginning to think about that. So I suppose I'm alluding to active travel and what that means. And a lot of shops, retail businesses across London are focusing on that high-end performance category. And not very many of us are doing well in terms of inviting in that new customer, that active travel. So that's where we're going. That's our change. We're looking to pivot and increase our reach to embrace both categories, high performance and also the cyclists that don't even call themselves cyclists.
Exactly that. I'm probably one of those. So in terms of embracing that growth, what are you going to need to look for external support to be able to drive that business growth?
Yes, and we've already been going after that external support because, as a small independent business, we have limited resources and limited manpower to do this. But what we can do is we can kind of dream big and sort of reach out to those influencers on a local level, be it local boroughs, be it local councils, be it brand partners, brand suppliers. And I think one of the things our suppliers, so the bicycle brands and the component suppliers and distributors recognise is the most important person in all of this is the rider, the cyclist. And it's how we get to that cyclist. And they understand that the bicycle retailer on the high street is invaluable. So that's what we are looking to do more of. So engaging with boroughs, engaging with kind of governing bodies, such as the Bicycle Association, for example, and also engaging with our brand suppliers and helping them understand what value we can offer them and what place we are, or what position we are in terms of that kind of customer journey, from the awareness phase through to choosing a bike, through to getting it fixed, through to mending that puncture. And we need to position ourselves better than ever before in that, if you consider it the awareness phase, and then make sure we sustain our position on that high street, because it's an ever challenging position to be in. A business on a high street, as some of our speakers already have alluded to, is a challenging environment with the economic shocks we've experienced, also the change since COVID. We've seen a bumper year in cycling, but one of the things we're looking towards is the sort of the next 3 to 5 years and what we can do to lay the right foundations now to kind of make sure we're delivering the right in terms of products, in terms of sales, also in terms of service. So they're the two angles we're trying to align better with in terms of local governing bodies and suppliers.
At the end of the day, going to buy a bike in person is all about the consumer experience, and you can't really get away from that, or you would hope so from your position. So
no, that's right.
So I know when we chatted previously, you've had experience of interacting with the local authorities, and you've had two sides of the same coin. So you've had a good and a bad, but let's talk about the positive one. So tell me, and I know this is not a London authority, but it's very close by, so we'll include it here.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're lucky enough, we've got stores in different locations. We have one in Paddington, one in Epsom in Surrey, and then sort of sister stores to our business are family related, and they're in Chiswick and Shepherd's Bush. But the positive experience we work with the local borough in Epsom, and it's all about education and awareness. And we work with the Epsom bid, and every borough has a kind of a bid campaign partner, which is all about looking after retail businesses on that high street. And one of the things they didn't know about was the Mini Holland project in Kingston upon Thames, which is about 5 miles away from Epsom. It is unbelievable to know that a borough, which is 5 miles away, had no idea about a £25 million cycling investment 5 miles down the road. And they were trying to do exactly the same thing in the borough of Epsom, which is where one of our other shops is located. Yet here I am explaining to them, go and take a look. There's a £25 million cycling super hub as part of the London Borough Mini Holland project that's just been built. And they had no idea. And I also think cyclists don't know it's there either. You know, if you go to these hubs, they're possibly a combination of COVID, possibly a combination of lack of awareness. But I think where we can really start to help is that kind of in that community engagement. But as a retailer, we need support to do that. So that means the Bicycle Association, that means the London Cycling Campaign. We want to kind of engage with them so we can reach the customer. Because the metrics for us, you know, in terms of economics, you know, we're a bicycle retailer and we make our money by selling bikes and servicing bikes in high street locations. We're not an internet seller. We don't ship bikes around the country. We try and deal on the local level. So that's really our focus. And I think in terms of that engaging with that kind of the broader, if you like, participants, you know, the brands are keen to support us. The local boroughs are keen, but I think what we need is a joined up voice so that we can help support that in, if you like, the soft measures, the people skills, the basic maintenance, you know, the learning to ride campaigns that Ashok alluded to as well. You know, we want to get involved in that, but we haven't got the capacity to do it all ourselves. But we've certainly got the energy to do it, and we want to do more of that. But it's a tricky one because for us, it's that return on investment. We're a tiny business, and we know it needs to get done. It's like how much do we invest into it in terms of time and energy and hard cash in terms of the returns we're getting? You know, because we also have challenges in the world of retail. The economics have changed out of all recognition.
And that right there is where we are really aspiring to add that glue, to join up those boroughs, and we'll be singing the same hymn, so to speak, in terms of getting that message across. Thank you very much, Murph.
Pleasure.
I'm going to move on to my final section now, and I can sense through the airways that everyone's craving to share their ideas. And this section is all about us coming to you and asking how you can get involved and help us to push this message. And so I want you to use the Q&A section, and if you're really keen, we'll get you online and get you voicing your ideas. So we're looking at getting involved, and by involved I mean to help us reach the right influencers at the local authority level, and in order to enable them to draw down on the available funding, armed with these such compelling messages that you've heard today. And that we have put together a few ideas just to get you going. So obviously you're all operating out there at a local level, and you're going to really understand the pain points for local cyclists. And by removing those pain points, that's going to potentially get more cyclists on the road. So how do you engage with the local authorities, the boroughs, and get your message across? Would it be useful for us to produce some kind of template letter? Could you take that up and send it back into the boroughs and help push the message again? Could it be as simple as sharing what you're hearing today on social media? What are you thinking around potential educational initiatives and to draw in more skills into the industry? I've not got my Q&A up. Add your questions in, please, or your statements of how you can help. Do we need to be thinking about ambassadors outside of the Bicycle Association and London Cycling Campaign?
I think the point here is that we're really open and willing to listen to everyone's ideas. I mean, being involved with the market data service, you know, you've heard, so that we can measure stuff on the ground. I think understanding where the local investment should be in your borough. There's loads of stuff where I think people can get involved. And I'm sure we haven't even thought of half of the ways that the industry can get involved. And that's the really exciting part, I think, of what comes next. But Kirsty, thank you so much for leading that session. I think you brought that alive brilliantly. And thanks to Nick and thanks to Murph. I'm just going to wrap up then the last few minutes in terms of where next. You've obviously heard all about London and what we're doing in London, but we'd love to be able to take this around the UK and have the same conversation with local authorities in other sort of parts of England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's a bit of data gathering again to help us lead that process, but also it's going to depend a huge amount about, you know, how much does industry want us to get involved locally. And you know, clearly there's data. I think we'll look at population, we'll look at existing cycling levels, how much has been invested in cycling already, market data. You know, what does that look like? I think there's going to be a huge amount of political will. You know, where do we think we're going to go where there's a receptive mind? Clearly, we'll look at areas with cycling commissioners. You know, what's the chance of having the message listened to? And I think, as you'll have heard earlier, you know, the importance, I think, of working with a strong local partner who really understands who to talk to locally and the message to get across. And you know, it might be that the message that we make in other regions around the country is different to London. And you know, and I think working with local partners gives us a really good way of understanding that. And clearly, the last part is going to be all about the industry engagement side of it. And you know, I am going to say as well, funding is going to be important too. You know, as a trade body with limited resources, you know, we have to be really smart with where we invest our money. And you know, we talked at the beginning of the week around the Investors in Cycling initiative, and you know, very much that is a way of driving new funding in to help us do more and go around the country. So you know, that is important too. So that is it. So coming to an end, thank you very much for joining. You know, I guess in summary, what I would say is, you know, it's a fantastic moment for us to really be doing this project. The funding is now there locally. The political will there is nationally. Sorry, the political will is there nationally. The job to do now is to unlock this locally, and we've got fresh insights and momentum to now do that. And what we'd really like to do as the Bicycle Association is work together with the industry, work together with partners on the ground to really get this message across. And you know, we'd be delighted to hear your ideas on how you might get involved to do that.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for in this episode of the BA podcast. As ever, if you'd like to find out more about this or any of the work that we do, then head over to our website at bicycleassociation.org.uk. And of course, if any of this has piqued your interest and you'd like to find out more about joining the Bicycle Association, just click the Join tab on our website. If you want to be amongst the first to know when our next episode is ready, then just make sure that you click subscribe before you go. But from me, Alex Seaman, and everybody here at the BA, bye for now.